Kazuma is a guy who rarely leaves his house and is really into video games and anime. One day, he wakes up super early to get the limited edition of his favorite video game. After an epic journey, he finally gets it and is overjoyed. But on his way back, he spots a girl who seems to be from his school about to get run over by what he thinks is a truck. Heroic Kazuma tries to push her out of the way only to find out it's actually a really slow tractor. He literally dies of fright and finds himself in the afterlife. The goddess Aqua tells him he died for nothing because the tractor wasn't even a threat to the girl. She laughs at his absurdly tragic death and says even the doctors and his own family made fun of him. That's crazy. She offers him two choices: be reborn in a new world or spend eternity bored in heaven. She suggests a fantasy world where he could become a hero, as the Demon King's army is messing with the peace. If he chooses to go, he'll remember everything. Aqua tells Kazuma that before reincarnating, he can pick a weapon or a special skill. He asks if he'll be able to speak the language of the new world, and Aqua assures him that the gods would use their powers to help him learn quickly. Kazuma checks out the different skill options, but Aqua rushes him, thinking he'll die soon in the new world because, well, he's an otaku. Annoyed by her comment, Kazuma decides to choose Aqua herself to bring along to the new world. Aqua is shocked when another goddess appears and approves of Kazuma's choice. They're told they'll be fetched if they manage to defeat the Demon King. Aqua starts freaking out because she has no combat skills. On their way to the new world, Kazuma mocks Aqua for having looked down on him. They arrive in the town of Axel, a haven for newbie adventurers. Kazuma is pumped for his new life, but Aqua does nothing but cry and complain the whole time. Kazuma tells Aqua she can go back if she really wants to, but Aqua snaps back saying she can't anymore. Basically, there's no turning back now. Kazuma then tells Aqua to chill and not freak out. As they walk toward the guild, Kazuma casually asks Aqua if she knows anything about the city, being a goddess and all, but Aqua admits she's clueless. She doesn't know such things. Kazuma thinks to himself that she's definitely useless. They arrive at the Adventurers Guild, and Kazuma tells the receptionist, Luna, that they want to join. She informs them there's a membership fee. Kazuma turns to Aqua and asks if she has any money, but she replies she's broke. Kazuma thinks to himself again that she's utterly useless. Flat broke. They're at a loss for what to do next. Aqua spots a priest and asks for an offering because she's a goddess, but the man doesn't buy it. Still, the priest gives them some bills out of pity after seeing the bind they're in. With that, they manage to register at the guild. Luna walks them through the ropes, and they create their registry cards, which award points for unlocking skills as they level up. Kazuma has average power but high intelligence and luck. Aqua chooses to be a priestess. Kazuma is stoked to start adventuring, but they end up working as laborers, earning just enough to sleep in a stable. Kazuma and Aqua take on a mission to defeat 5 giant frogs, thinking this would boost their stats to defeat the Demon King. But Kazuma can't even get close without the frogs trying to gobble him up, so he spends his time running away while Aqua laughs her head off. That is, until a frog snares Aqua with its tongue, and Kazuma uses Aqua as bait to defeat it. Aqua cries in gratitude, but refuses to go back to heaven, saying her goddess reputation would be ruined if word got out that she was running from mere frogs. In a bold move, Aqua tries to face off against a frog with her attack, but it does nothing, and she's almost devoured until Kazuma saves her. They manage to defeat 2 frogs on their first day. Back in town, Aqua insists they need allies, as they won't manage alone. Kazuma doesn't think anyone will join newbies, but Aqua is convinced that as a priestess, everyone will want to team up. Kazuma is skeptical. Aqua posts an ad in the guild looking for members, but no one shows up due to her high requirements. Kazuma tells her to lower them to attract people on their level. A mage named Megu tells them she wants to join after delivering a grand speech, but Kazuma and Aqua don't take her seriously. Megu insists, revealing she hasn't eaten in 3 days. When Kazuma questions her eye patch, she claims it's to seal her powers, Kazuma doesn't buy it, and Megu admits it's just for show. However, when she shows her registry card, it turns out she really is an Archmage with high magic. Convinced, Kazuma finally lets Megu join the team. He hooks her up with some food, and afterward they go back to the frog-busting mission. There, Megu schools them on how explosion magic is super powerful but needs a hot minute to cast. So Kazuma and Aqua decide to play bodyguards while Megu works her explosive magic. Aqua tries to use a spell on a giant frog but nearly ends up as Frog Chow, making Kazuma lose even more faith in her. Just then, Megu starts her magical chant and the whole vibe changes. When she finally lets loose with her explosion magic, she not only blasts a frog to smithereens but also rearranges part of the landscape. Kazuma can't help but be blown away by what he's seen. But then Megu collapses on the ground. She reveals she can only use her explosion magic once a day. Afterward, she's totally wiped and can't move. Our skeptical hero, Kazuma, gets pretty disappointed hearing this. Just as they're taking this all in, another frog shows up trying to make a meal out of Megu. Kazuma's got no choice but to swoop in and save both her and Aqua. He manages to beat the remaining frogs and complete their first mission. Back in town, he tells Megu to keep her explosions on the down low, unless it's an emergency, and focus on other magic. Megu's like, nah, all I know is explosion magic. Realizing she's not much help, Kazuma tries to kick her off the team. But Megu grabs him tight and refuses to leave. This creates a stir, and several girls start giving Kazuma the stink eye. Megu uses this to blackmail him into letting her stay. Reluctantly, Kazuma caves. When splitting the mission's reward, he realizes they're not making enough dough. Feeling down, he questions if these quests are even worth it. His moping gets interrupted by Darkness, the paladin, who wants in on the team. From the get-go, Kazuma senses something's off. Darkness hears that Aqua and Megu got all mucky from fighting frogs and insists on joining Kazuma's crew. He warns her they're all a bunch of noobs, but that just makes Darkness more eager. She admits she's super clumsy despite being strong and wants to be their meat shield. Kazuma gets a bit uneasy with her so close, but tries to talk her out of joining. It just pumps her up more. Feeling cornered, Kazuma makes up an excuse to slip out of the tavern. The next day, Kazuma and Megu are chowing down together and snooping on each other's skill cards. Kazuma's leveled up and is wondering what skill to learn next. Megu tells him he needs a mentor to unlock new abilities. So he asks her to teach him explosive magic, and Megumin is over the moon. But bummer, he doesn't have enough points, so no explosive magic for now. Just then, Darkness walks in saying she wants to pick up their conversation and join the team. Kazuma rises to the occasion, and weirdly enough, she's totally into it. Enter Chris, a thief and friend of Darkness. She suggests that he learn a thief skill and offers to teach him if he buys her a drink. Kazuma agrees on the spot. I mean, who wouldn't? They step outside the tavern, and Chris shows him how to swipe a wallet using steel. She tells him he should be able to use steel to get his wallet back. So, Kazuma decides to learn the new skill and gears up to use it. Chris tells him whatever he steals is his to keep, and the jackpot would be her magical dagger. Kazuma gives it a shot, but ends up stealing Chris's underwear instead. Back with Aqua and Megu, Darkness spills the beans on the whole thing. Kazuma shows off his new skill and also ends up snagging Megu's underwear. Megu is embarrassed. Darkness wants to join the team, but Kazuma turns her down again. Realizing Darkness is a paladin, the girls start thinking about recruiting her. Kazuma tells her he wants to defeat the Demon King, thinking it would scare her off. But nope, she's all in. Megu is also down to take on the Demon King with her explosive magic. Far from scaring them off, Kazuma has actually pumped them up to join his quest. Just as they're getting into it, an emergency breaks up the convo. The guild is calling all adventurers, so Kazuma and crew head to the village entrance. Once there, Kazuma's like, what the heck is going on? Out of nowhere, an army of flying cabbages shows up. All the adventurers dive into the fray. Aqua says the cabbages just want to pass through town to die in peace, but no one cares. It turns into a full-blown harvest fest. Kazuma is dumbfounded. Darkness jumps into the action to flex her paladin skills but epically fails, leaving Kazuma super disappointed. However, she spots 2 soldiers in danger and goes all human shield mode, which causes her armor to start falling apart. Finally, Megu unleashes her explosive magic and annihilates the remaining cabbages. Everyone scores a special bonus for the mission. So, after the mission, Kazuma and the girls meet up at the guild's tavern. They start celebrating and decide to form a team. Kazuma doesn't really have a choice but to accept. Dark hits him with a looking forward to working together. Kazuma picks up some new skills and realizes he's leveling up as an adventurer. Meanwhile, Dark sports some brand new armor, and Megu buys this sick magic staff. Suddenly, they see Aqua fighting with Luna. Turns out Aqua mistook lettuces for the flying cabbages. When Aqua asks Kazuma how much money he made, he says he raked in 1,000,000 coins. The girls are floored. He used his thief skills to squeeze every last dime out of those cabbages. Aqua, being Aqua, asks for a loan because she's up to her eyeballs in debt. Kazuma, kind of forced into it, lends Aqua the money to settle her debts. The next day, he shows up in new gear and the girls are buzzing. He finally looks like a legit adventurer. They try to pick up a mission, but all that's left are high-difficulty ones. Luna spills that a commander from the Demon King's army is camping near the village, scaring off all the smaller monsters. Kazuma realizes they're going to be jobless for a bit and tells Aqua they'll have to wait for reinforcements from the capital. The following day, Megu drags Kazuma to the outskirts to practice her explosive magic. She asks him to carry her back when she's done blowing stuff up. They find an abandoned castle, and Megu puts it to the test with a mega explosion. She's wiped out and falls to the ground, but she's loving it and turns it into her daily routine. New day, new castle, new explosion. Kazuma becomes Megu's personal explosion critic, and when she pulls off her biggest blast to date, he congratulates her. They're both in high spirits and head back to the guild to chat with the girls. Suddenly, Luna announces an emergency, and everyone bolts. They run into Veldia, a commander from the Demon King's army, who is super ticked off because someone's been bombarding his castle. All eyes land on Megu. Despite her nerves, she steps up and tells Veldia she was just trying to flush him out. Veldia says he doesn't have time for amateurs but warns Megu to knock it off. Megu refuses, and Veldia casts a curse. Darkness jumps in to take the curse, all thrilled about the added drama. Veldia announces that Darkness has a week to live unless Megu comes to his castle. Darkness is thrilled at the idea of being a hostage and is ready to go with Veldia, but Kazuma stops her, allowing an obviously uncomfortable Veldia to leave. Just when Kazuma and Megu are about to embark on a risky mission to free Darkness from her curse, Aqua shows up and solves everything with her priestess skills. Everyone celebrates Aqua's newfound ability, but Kazuma and Megu can't help but feel a bit bummed out. They were all set to face the danger and save Darkness, and now it's like their spotlight got stolen. Later at the guild's tavern, Aqua starts complaining about her debts. With Veldia nearby, easy missions are hard to come by, and the group's financial situation is getting dicey. So Aqua floats the idea of taking on a high-difficulty mission since everyone's funds are running low. Kazuma, skeptical at first, eventually agrees to Aqua's plan of purifying a lake infested with brutal alligators. The upside is they won't have to fight them. Aqua just needs to purify the water. Kazuma, always looking to maximize the situation, suggests Aqua go it alone. But Aqua, aware of the risks, insists she needs protection while performing the task. "How long will it take to do all that?" Kazuma asks. Aqua says she'll need half a day to complete the purification. Kazuma can't help but be shocked. Half a day in a lake full of brutal alligators sounds like an eternity. Finally, Aqua convinces him to go ahead with the mission. Kazuma, always the strategist, comes up with an idea to ensure their safety. The next day, the group heads to the lake, where they place Aqua inside a large cage. This way, she can carry out her purification task without the risk of becoming an alligator appetizer. Aqua starts to get bored, but then, boom, alligators everywhere. She freaks out and screams for help. The others see her but don't move because the alligators can't break the cage. This pushes Aqua to speed purify the lake, and finally, the alligators go away. They tell her it's time to go back to town, but Aqua is so spooked she wants to stay in the cage. Kazuma realizes her state and decides to carry her back in her cage. Then the scene changes, and a new hero appears. Enter Kaio, another reincarnated hero like Kazuma. He's with his team, and they've just defeated a dragon with a legendary sword he carries. They arrive in the town and bump into Kazuma and his crew returning from their mission. Seeing Aqua in the cage, Kaio is shocked and immediately goes to break her out. Kazuma tells Aqua that Kaio recognized her as a goddess, which lifts her spirits, and she decides to leave the cage. Kaio says that it was Aqua who gave him the sword and sent him to this world. Hearing Aqua's whole story, Kaio gets mad at Kazuma for bringing her there in the first place. Kyo wants the girls to join his team, saying Kazuma's not worth it. But they reject him, and Kazuma leaves with his squad. Kyo stops him and challenges him to a duel. If Kaio wins, Aqua goes with him. If he loses, he'll do whatever Kazuma wants. Hearing this, Kazuma doesn't think twice and surprises Kyo with an attack. Using his steel ability, he snatches the sword and knocks him out with one blow. Kaio's teammates witness this and, obviously, get pissed. They call him a coward, but Kazuma stands his ground and warns that he could also use steel to humiliate them. Hearing this, the girls choose to flee. The next day at the guild, Aqua discovers that her mission's reward has been docked because of the broken cage. She's visibly bummed until Kaio makes an entrance. Aqua confronts him and demands he cover the damage. Kyo agrees, but then finds out Kazuma has sold his sword. Furious, Kaio storms out of the guild in search of his lost weapon. Right at that moment, Luna announces a new emergency and calls on adventurers to head to the town entrance. She specifies that the protagonist crew must lead. Once outside, they find Veldia, who's annoyed they didn't visit his castle. To top it off, Kazuma realizes Megum has been continuing her siege on the castle because she thinks it's a perfect practice ground. That's when Kazuma finds out Aqua has been teaching magic to Megu. Frustrated they can't find normal jobs thanks to Veldia, Kazuma gets mad at both of them. But before he can vent, Veldia shows up and criticizes them for not helping Darkness, believing she died from his curse. Just then, Darkness makes her epic entrance, leaving Veldia dumbfounded. Aqua doesn't miss a beat and mocks Veldia, who becomes enraged and threatens everyone. Aqua counters with a powerful purification spell that not only hurts Veldia but also destroys his magical horse. For the first time surprised, Veldia summons an undead army to attack. Aqua, scared, runs to Kazuma for help. Together with Megu, they formulate a plan. Kazuma lures the undead towards Veldia, clearing the way for Megu to unleash her explosive magic, defeating Veldia and his army in one fell swoop. Adventurers start to celebrate, but surprise, Veldia's still alive. They try to attack him but fall easily. Darkness steps in, fighting with all her might, but it's not enough. Kazuma realizes Veldia's weakness is water and tells everyone to use water magic against him. Aqua unleashes her full power, causing a massive flood that weakens Veldia and destroys part of the town's walls. Darkness uses her last energy to stop Veldia's escape, sealing his defeat. After all that ruckus, Kazuma whips out his trump card and uses his steel ability to snatch Veldia's head clean off. Holding the head like a trophy, he celebrates with the other adventurers. Enter Aqua, who picks the perfect moment to purify the head with her magic. Just like that, they've knocked off one of the Demon King's top guys. You'd think a massive reward is in store, right? Wrong! Luna shows up and bills them for the city wall damages, so yeah, they end up broke again, all thanks to Aqua's flood. Feeling the pinch, Kazuma starts grumbling about being cash-strapped. Get this! The guy even wakes up with frozen eyelashes because he's stuck sleeping in a stable. He decides it's high time for a new quest with the ladies. They opt to fight snow spirits and head off to the icy plains. Over there, they handle the snow spirits pretty effortlessly, which gets Kazuma wondering why no one took this mission before. Out of nowhere, Megumin goes full Michael Bay and uses her explosive magic to wipe out the remaining spirits, before collapsing from exhaustion. She spills the beans to Kazuma about leveling up, which obviously lifts his spirits. Just then, they sense the arrival of the Winter General. Darkness is all pumped for the challenge, but Kazuma starts losing his cool. He's still not vibing with this new world and its quirky inhabitants. The general attacks and effortlessly shatters Darkness's sword, leaving everyone stunned. Aqua, showing a rare moment of humility, releases the captured spirits and kneels before the general. She suggests everyone else do the same, but Darkness ain't having it. The general, seeing Kazuma still armed, goes ahead and kills him. Kazuma wakes up in limbo and meets the goddess Eris. She offers him a chance to reincarnate into a wealthy family in Japan. At first, he's pumped, but then he remembers his experiences in that fantastic world and realizes he's actually grown fond of it. Kazuma gets emotional and tears up, thinking about his attachment to that strange yet cherished world. At that critical moment, Aqua's voice rings out, announcing that she will use her powers to bring Kazuma back to life. Turns out, Aqua is Eris's boss, and she wastes no time in persuading, or more like blackmailing, Eris to let Kazuma return to the living. Eris reluctantly agrees, and in a flash, Kazuma is back in the fantasy world. The reunion with the ladies is heartwarming. Everyone is happy to see him again. However, the happiness is short-lived as winter starts settling into the town. Kazuma and Aqua start worrying about how they're going to face this new challenge. They decide to visit a store run by none other than Wiz, the undead queen. Turns out Kazuma's crew already knew Wiz. They had run into her in a graveyard where she was sending souls to heaven. However, a mission took them there, and due to some unusual circumstances, they ended up disrupting Wiz's work, who then turned into a shopkeeper. During the visit, Wiz congratulates Kazuma for his victory over Beldia, which leads him to ask how she knows the demon. Wiz reveals that she is actually one of the 8 generals of the Demon King's army. Hearing this, Aqua lunges at her, already drooling over the juicy reward for capturing one of the 8 leaders. However, Wiz clarifies that her role is just to maintain the magical barrier around the Demon King's castle, so there's no bounty on her head. She adds that to face the Demon King, they must first defeat the other generals. Seeing that Wiz isn't a bad person, Kazuma decides to let her off the hook, and she immediately thanks him. Next, he asks her to teach him an ability of her race. Wiz agrees and teaches him a skill to absorb and distribute health. Kazuma tests it out on Aqua and decides to learn it, thinking it will come in handy in the future. He uses his registration card to store the ability. Just then, a noble walks into the store, seeking Wiz's help to get rid of spirits in one of his houses. Kazuma and his team agree to help the noble with the haunted house issue in exchange for lodging. They spend the night there, and Kazuma soon realizes the place is indeed haunted. He dashes to find Aqua, but bumps into Megumin instead. The two flee from the ghosts until they find Aqua, who proceeds to exorcise the house. Now they've got a place to live, and Kazuma is pumped about the comfortable life he expects to have. The next day, Kazuma bumps into 2 adventurers, Keith and Dust, who tell him about a men-only succubus joint. Intrigued, Kazuma decides to check it out. There, a succubus assures him he can have whatever dream he desires. Kazuma gets stoked and signs a contract with the succubus, giving up a bit of his life energy. She warns him that drinking alcohol could mess up his special dream. When he gets home, a spectacular dinner awaits him, courtesy of Darkness's parents. Although Aqua offers him wine, he remembers the warning and turns it down. That night, excitement keeps him awake. He opts to take a bath to relax and finally drifts off to sleep. But he wakes up abruptly when Darkness barges into the bath. Thinking he's still in his dream, he asks her to scratch his back, which she happily agrees to, thanks to her masochistic tendencies. Just then, a commotion outside interrupts the moment. Frustrated and confused, Kazuma steps out to see what's going on. He realizes this isn't a dream when he finds Aqua and Megu capturing a novice succubus. He decides to help her escape, making the girls think he's under a spell. They give him a beating, but the succubus manages to get away. The next day, he fakes amnesia, and Darkness buys the idea that he was being controlled by a succubus. The team visits Wiz's shop where Megu runs into her rival Yun, and an argument breaks out. Amidst all this, Kazuma stumbles upon a wish-granting necklace. When he puts it on, Wiz gets nervous and explains that the necklace will tighten and kill him in 4 days if he doesn't fulfill his wish. The girls feel guilty and decide to help Kazuma, who milks the situation by sending them on various errands, hoping to get the collar off. As he continues to exploit the situation to make his life easier, the collar stays on, leaving him wondering what his real wish could be. Megu grows concerned as he has only 1 day left to get rid of it. Yun steps in and, after a chat with Megu, decides to help. Now, you'd think things are looking up, but hang on. The next day, resigned, Kazuma thanks everyone and decides to be brutally honest with them, pointing out their flaws. This makes everyone uncomfortable, but the collar loosens. Kazuma realizes his true wish is to have a break every once in a while. The girls get mad and force the collar back on him, which eventually sends him back to meet the goddess. Kazuma dies. Again. Kazuma returns to the fantasy world, still ticked off about the divine scolding he got for his dumb death. Just a few days in, Luna drops a bombshell. A deadly machine called the Destroyer is approaching the town. The guild's adventurers gear up for the ultimate showdown. Kazuma asks Aqua about disabling the Destroyer's defenses, and she's all in. They set out, knowing Megu has the trump card with her explosive magic. Out of nowhere, Wiz shows up and volunteers to help out with her magic. With Aqua successfully lowering the Destroyer's shields, Kazuma gives Megu the nudge she needs to unleash her spell. Together, they take down the Destroyer with magic. The team's pumped until the Destroyer starts its self-destruct sequence. At this point, Darkness gets pumped up and rushes for the Destroyer's core. Kazuma, Aqua, and Wiz tag along and find the core about to blow. In a clutch move, Kazuma asks Wiz to teleport the volatile core somewhere random. She does it. Although the Destroyer overheats, Kazuma boosts Megu with his new skill. She then casts her most powerful spell, finally ending the Destroyer for good. The crew heads back to the guild to party over their victory, but the fun gets crashed by Royal Prosecutor Sina and her Imperial troops. Sina drops another bomb, accusing Kazuma of terrorism because the core destroyed some important lord's mansion. No casualties, but she aims to prove if Kazuma's a terrorist or working with the Demon King. The adventurers try to defend him, but Senna won't budge. She threatens to jail everyone, and just when you thought things couldn't get worse, Aqua pipes up that Kazuma agreed to take responsibility for damages, something Megu immediately backs up. The suspense skyrockets when Sina orders Kazuma's arrest. Darkness even tries to take the blame to save him, but Sina isn't having it. Wiz also attempts to intervene, but Aqua holds her back, suggesting it's best if only Kazuma faces the music. In the end, Kazuma gets thrown into jail, quickly regretting his life choices. Just when all seems lost, an explosion rings out near the prison. Aqua shows up to bust Kazuma out, revealing it was Darkness who helped her escape detection. Although Kazuma wonders if breaking out would make his situation even worse, Aqua convinces him that he'd probably get executed if he stays behind bars. As a last resort, Aqua hands Kazuma a small wire to pick the lock and use his new stealth ability to slip out. The suspense keeps building as Aqua lays out an escape plan, advising him that she'll be waiting at the prison entrance to break him out. However, the plan falls apart when Kazuma discovers his cell lock has a combination. Disheartened, he sets the wire aside and goes to sleep, leaving Aqua waiting in vain all night. The next day, Aqua comes back with a new plan, this time bringing a saw to cut through the window bars. Kazuma, on the other hand, says the window's too high for him. Aqua, ever the problem solver, tries to bring a box into the cell for him to reach the window. But the guards stop her, and Kazuma, feeling resigned, tosses the saw out the window and goes back to bed. Just when hope seems all but lost, Kazuma is brought in for questioning by Sena. She whips out a magical lie detector, making sure he can't lie. The situation had just gotten even worse for Kazuma. Now it's Sina's turn, who subjects Kazuma to intense questioning. Thanks to the magical lie detector, Kazuma has no choice but to tell the truth. He confesses that he destroyed the destroyer's core to save the town, and the detector remains silent. That was a close one for Kazuma. Convinced, Sina keeps digging and asks if he's ever been in contact with leaders of the Demon King. Kazuma denies it, but this time the detector goes off. The truth is, he has spoken with Beldia and Wiz. Kazuma clearly forgot about that small detail. Sina decides to put Kazuma on trial, where a feudal lord is already eager to see him executed. Sina calls witnesses like Chris and Kaio, using their testimonies to make Kazuma look bad. Kazuma feels this is totally unfair. They're twisting everything against him. Just as the governor orders Kazuma's execution, something changes. Kazuma has a brilliant idea. In front of the detector, he asserts that he doesn't work for the Demon King. The machine stays silent, leaving Sina and the judge speechless. Just as they are about to declare him innocent, Alder steps in and demands they find him guilty. Kazuma is livid, but then darkness bursts onto the scene. Darkness reveals her noble heritage and offers to prove Kazuma's innocence in exchange for doing Alder a favor. Alder agrees, the trial gets suspended, and the girls celebrate. Woo, that was way too close for comfort for Kazuma. Grateful, Kazuma says goodbye to Darkness, who leaves to fulfill her end of the bargain with Alder. The next day, everyone's on edge, but Kazuma is climbing the walls because Darkness hasn't returned from her meeting with Alder. Aqua gets nervous too. Suddenly, Megu arrives with a cat she found. Aqua tries to pet it, but the cat goes ballistic and scratches her. Megumin ignores Aqua's complaints and asks what's going on. Kazuma spills that they're worried about Darkness, thinking Alder might be taking advantage of her. This worries Megu, but Kazuma believes it's too late to do anything. He asks the girls to be nice to Darkness when she returns, as if nothing bad happened. At that moment, Sina shows up and cuts the conversation short. Sina drags Kazuma and the girls to a snowy area to hunt giant frogs. The reason? Megu's explosions woke them up early. Speaking of Megu, she's already used up all her magic and a frog catches her. Kazuma wants to help, but Megu tells him to save Aqua first, who is running with another frog on her heels. Easier said than done when they're both in danger. Kazuma gets cocky and uses a new skill, Sharp Shot. He's feeling on top of the world until the frog swallows Aqua. Left with no choice, he unsheathes his sword and manages to free Aqua, who bursts into tears, unable to deal with the frogs anymore. Poor Aqua. This frog hunt is too much for her. Just when more frogs appear and they start to flee with Sina, she gets caught too. Then Aqua is caught again, leaving Kazuma the last one standing. But then Yun shows up, saves the day with his light magic, and frees everyone. Thank goodness for Yun's timing. Yun challenges Megu to a duel. Megu accepts but can't use magic. It'll be a fist fight, and Yun agrees. Kazuma's mind is blown, as he can't imagine Megu winning a hand-to-hand fight against Yun. This should be an interesting matchup. Megu pulls a trick out of her sleeve. She plans to use the frog slime covering her to make Yun not even want to touch her. It works, Yun gives up, and Megu scores another win. Back in town, Megu hands over the loot from the mission to Kazuma to help pay off some of his debt. They share a hug and end up fighting over who gets to the bathroom first. They decide to bathe together because, well, why not? The next day, the group goes to Wiz's shop and runs into Yun. She challenges Megu again, but Megu drops that she has bathed with Kazuma, leaving Yun speechless. She runs out of the shop, and Megu tallies another win in her book of duels. The debt issue still hangs in the air. Kazuma says they need to go to a dungeon to find more loot. Megu refuses because her explosive magic would be a problem. Kazuma tells her to wait outside then. Aqua mentions dark and Kazuma gets serious. He says they can't wait any longer or they'll starve. Enter Luna to the rescue, who tells them that there's a secret passage in the dungeon that nobody has explored. Everyone gets excited and heads over. Upon arrival, Kazuma asks them to wait while he ventures out using his new enemy detection and clairvoyance skills. Aqua decides to follow him because, She's a goddess and doesn't need protection. She's surprised to see that Kazuma can see in the dark thanks to his ability. They find the secret passage, Kazuma activates the entrance, and they decide to keep exploring together. Kazuma and Aqua continue in the dungeon, every creak and sound making their hair stand on end. But hey, they press on. Thanks to Kazuma's skills, they detect an approaching enemy. It's not a boss enemy or anything, but caution is key. Kazuma dispatches it, and they continue. Then, they come across the body of an adventurer. Here's where Aqua surprises everyone. Instead of being her usual clueless self, she casts a purification spell. This allows the poor adventurer to rest in peace. Kazuma finds himself thinking Aqua has become a responsible goddess, at least for today. But despite more exploring, they find nothing else of value. It's a letdown for Kazuma. Looks like the dungeon wasn't the ticket to riches he'd hoped for. Aqua finds a shiny chest and is about to open it when Kazuma stops her just in time. He warns her that attractive chests are usually traps. Using his enemy detecting skill, Kazuma confirms that it was indeed a trap. They keep moving, and along the way, Aqua purifies several demons. This leads Kazuma to admit that without Aqua, he'd be in trouble. She asks for more compliments, but Kazuma changes the subject, mentioning how strange it is to find so many monsters in the area. Aqua ignores him. Something else has caught her attention, the smell of the undead. Exploring further, they discover a secret room where they encounter an undead mage. The mage shares his tragic story. He escaped with the love of his life, a nobleman's daughter, and had to battle an entire kingdom. He took a fatal wound in the process and lost his humanity. Moved by the story, Aqua agrees to his request for purification. She sets up a magic circle and casts her spell, allowing the mage and his wife's souls to finally rest in peace. To top it off, they decide to keep the mage's treasures, which will come in handy for settling their debt. Kazuma realizes that Aqua's holy power has attracted all their enemies. Deciding not to face any more problems, Kazuma activates his stealth skill and escapes alone. Aqua gets mad, but in the end, both emerge unscathed and return victoriously to the guild. Elated by the treasures they've obtained, Kazuma invites everyone in the guild for drinks. The party quickly spirals out of control, and Aqua ends up throwing up outside the guild. Days later, Kazuma's patience reaches its limit. He argues with Aqua for spending all their money on alcohol. When he suggests selling the last bottle they have, and even Aqua's silk scarf, she refuses. Kazuma uses his steal skill to swipe the scarf, causing Aqua to burst into tears. Just then, Darkness appears, dressed in noble attire. No one recognizes her at first, but when she identifies herself, the joy is universal. However, it turns into concern when they suspect Alder took advantage of her. Darkness clarifies that Alder wants to marry her off to his son Walter to forgive Kazuma's crimes. Dark confesses that her father is in favor of the wedding and asks for help convincing him it's a bad idea. Kazuma realizes he's about to lose Darkness as an ally and thinks this could be the perfect chance to get rid of her. According to him, Darkness isn't exactly the best in combat since she can't land a single hit. Excited by the idea, Kazuma suggests to Darkness that she accept the arranged marriage, provoking the anger of the girls in the group. However, he warns that if she rejects the offer, Alder will get mad at all of them. So he comes up with a brilliant plan to accept the marriage and ruin it later. Darkness thinks it's a genius idea and agrees. Just then, Sina appears looking for the protagonist. She informs them that strange monsters are lurking around the city and needs his help. Megu intervenes, saying Kazuma can't leave since Darkness needs him. Seeing this as an opportunity to get rid of Megu, who could mess up his plan, Kazuma suggests she go with Sina instead, since her explosive magic would be perfect for the situation. After accepting, Megu leaves with Sina and her soldiers, and the group meets with Darkness's father. When they're all together, Darkness tries to call off the wedding, arguing she's too young. But at that moment, Kazuma asks her to restrain herself to not cause a bad impression. Darkness realizes Kazuma has betrayed her just as Walter walks in. She tries to approach to cause a bad impression, but Kazuma stops her by stepping on her dress. Furious, Darkness privately reclaims Kazuma for not supporting her. He responds he can't risk staining the family's name. Darkness reveals that Walter isn't her type because he's too chivalrous and hardworking. This surprises Kazuma and Aqua, who thought he seemed like a catch. But Darkness confesses she's into guys who are pretty much the opposite, like Kazuma, who's ineffective and kind of a jerk. Both Kazuma and Aqua conclude that Darkness is just beyond saving. The group then meets Walter, who puts on a polite front for Darkness. She tries to ruin their meeting, but Kazuma shuts that down instantly with his magic. They stroll through the garden, and Walter tries to get to know Darkness better. Up to her usual mischief, she leads him to the training room to evaluate his sword skills. Walter refuses to draw his weapon against a lady, which ticks off Darkness. But he then reveals that he was planning on rejecting the arranged marriage until he met her. Impressed by her grit in the training room, even though she can't land a single hit, Walter yields first. This makes Darkness mad, accusing him of lacking guts. To show Walter what a real man should be like, Darkness challenges Kazuma to a duel. Kazuma accepts, and the trickster plays on Darkness's masochistic tendencies. He threatens her in such an electrifying way that she faints on the spot, handing him an automatic win. Walter, after seeing all the chaos, decides that Darkness would be happier with Kazuma and calls off the arranged marriage. Darkness's dad asks Kazuma to continue taking care of his daughter just before she wakes up, and that's when Darkness drops a bombshell. She's pregnant with Kazuma's child, leaving everyone stunned. Walter promises to talk to his dad about canceling the wedding, setting Darkness free. Her dad is overjoyed, thinking he'll be a grandpa. Just when you think it can't get crazier, Sina and Megumin burst onto the scene. Sina reveals that the monsters surrounding the town are coming from the dungeon and hints that Kazuma's crew might be the culprits. Kazuma pulls Aqua aside and finds out that her magical circle messed up the dungeon, unleashing the monsters. Yep, they've screwed up. Again. Now forced to assist Sina, the team heads to the dungeon, where explosive dolls greet them at the entrance. Sina hands them a talisman to use on the dungeon's magic circle, and Darkness volunteers to escort Kazuma. In the end, they run into Vanir, one of the 8 Demon King's generals. Despite his admin role, his main issue is with Aqua. Her magic circle is giving him headaches. Ever the bold hero, Darkness tries to attack but fails. Vanir controls her using his mask, but it turns out Darkness still has some consciousness left. Seizing the opportunity, Kazuma uses the talisman on Vanir's mask, allowing Aqua to almost purify him. On their way out, they try to purify Vanir again, but it's Megumin who, at Darkness's request, finishes him off with her explosive magic. Sena congratulates them and rewards them enough to pay off their debts. Next up, Kazuma and Dark pay a visit to Wiz. Surprise! Surprise! They bump into Vanir, who's now living his second life and working for Wiz. Gone are his Demon King boss days. Instead, Vanir pitches a business idea to Kazuma. Why not manufacture and sell stuff from Kazuma's world right here? Obviously, Kazuma jumps in. And speaking of jumping in, Kazuma discovers the joys of a newly invented heated table and makes it his new home. The girls have had enough and practically drag him out. Just when you think you know Kazuma, he shocks everyone by ordering a katana. He's stoked to get it, but then realizes it's way too big, so he's forced to cut it down to size. Just when he's brainstorming an epic name for his new weapon, Megu swoops in and names it Chuchumaru using a talisman without his consent. Kazuma is not thrilled, to say the least. In their next mission, they face off against a horde of sprinting lizards. Kazuma tries to strategize, but Aqua ruins it by drawing attention. Chaos ensues. Mid-battle, Kazuma comes face-to-face with the Lizard Queen. He attempts a precise shot to finish her, but ends up breaking his neck in a fall. He wakes up in front of Eris, the goddess, who advises him to be more careful. He checks on the girls and is relieved they're okay. Just when he's about to ask Eris to reincarnate him as a baby, Megu threatens him and forces him back to the fantasy world. Back in the game, Veneer offers Kazuma a ridiculous amount of money for the rights to his inventions. Kazuma and Aqua start acting like they've hit the jackpot, but Megu brings them back to Earth with a mission proposal. Kazuma declines, already daydreaming about his future riches, which seriously ticks off Megu. But wait, there's more. Megu plays her final card, inviting him to the Water City to heal his broken neck. Kazuma accepts but tells Veneer that the business deal is on hold. Veneer asks him to take Wiz along because she's been making some really bad purchasing choices, losing them money. Next day, Wiz joins the gang, and they head out in a guarded caravan. Everything's smooth sailing until Kazuma, using his clairvoyance, detects incoming creatures, leaping hawks. These buggers are attracted to Darkness's armor, and she's super thrilled about it. The guards try to shoo them away, but Kazuma pitches in, feeling guilty about Darkness's armor attracting them. Chaos hits a new level when Darkness starts sabotaging the guards because she actually wants the hawks to attack her. Kazuma apologizes and looks for an out. The driver mentions a nearby cave, and that's where they head. Darkness wants to be tied to the caravan as bait, and Wiz uses magic to keep the hawks at bay. They reach the cave, use Darkness as bait, and Megu wipes out the hawks with an explosive spell. The entire caravan celebrates them as heroes, but the win's bittersweet for Kazuma. Both the hawks and a subsequent zombie attack were basically his team's fault. Thankfully, Aqua purifies the zombies, giving them another moment of relief. But again, Kazuma realizes all these problems are self-inflicted and feels embarrassed. Finally, they arrive at their destination after a journey full of action and setbacks. The gang can't believe their eyes when they see the city. Aqua spills the beans that this place is actually the headquarters for her cult, leading Kazuma to realize it's packed with crazies. Just then, townsfolk swarm them, begging them to join the cult. The group decides to hightail it back to the inn, but the locals won't take no for an answer, forcing Kazuma into multiple escape acts. While they're out and about, Kazuma and Darkness bump into a little girl. They help her since she's hurt, but even she insists Kazuma should join the cult, which just sends him over the edge. Fed up, he heads to the church to have a word with the cult leader, where he finds Megumin also dealing with the pushy townsfolk. Kazuma tracks down Aqua, who's now the sin confessor. He tries to talk some sense into her, but she blows him off. So he plays the "I'll kick you out of the group" card, and she starts bawling. Apologies happen, and Aqua confesses that her divine power actually depends on her fanatical followers. She'd do anything for them. After this heart-to-heart, they retreat to the inn. Eager for a break, Kazuma takes a dip in the hot springs and meets a woman next to Hans, who's also annoyed with the pushy locals. Sensing her discomfort, the woman leaves, which prompts Kazuma to sneak a peek into the women's baths where Darkness and Megumin are. But oops, they had laid a trap for him, knowing he'd try to spy. Back at the inn, Aqua is sobbing her eyes out. Wiz reveals that Aqua accidentally purified the church's hot springs, turning them into plain water. That's why she got kicked out. The next day, Aqua begs the team to help save the water supply in the town, suspecting the Demon King's foul play. But Kazuma and Megumin give her the cold shoulder, ticking her off. Aqua and Darkness end up making a public plea that the water is being poisoned and that Aqua is their goddess. The citizens don't buy it and get mad, making their plan fall apart. Aqua slinks back to the inn, only for the crowd to want to burn her at the stake for lying. Time to bolt. So Aqua decided they had to head to the water source to cleanse the pollution. They make it there, but 2 guards block their path. Using Darkness as their VIP pass, claiming she's from an important family, they get through. Upon arrival, they find Hans polluting the water source. Wiz greets him like an old friend and spills that he's a general in the Demon King's army. Hans is pissed at Wiz for blowing his cover. Hans tries to leave, but Kazuma's crew isn't having it. Wiz argues with Hans, who thought they had a non-aggression deal as long as he got to do his thing. Wiz says she didn't know she was messing up his plans. Kazuma asks about the missing priest who used to guard the spring, to which Hans coldly says he ate him. This triggers Wiz, who releases her icy power, saying she'd only get involved if an innocent was harmed. Wiz attacks Hans with her ice magic, forcing him to morph into a poisonous slime. Meanwhile, Aqua gets busy purifying the water, catching the eyes of the skeptical locals. They start believing she's a goddess and lend a hand. Kazuma hatches a plan with the girls to take down Hans. He lures him away from the water source and sacrifices himself so Megumin can unleash her explosive magic, weakening Hans. Wiz follows up with her icy blast to finish him off, but the plot twist. Hans is still alive and swears revenge. Just then, Aqua steps in and uses her magic. With the citizens chanting her name, she becomes superpowered and blasts Hans into oblivion with one shot. Aqua revives Kazuma, but they have to skedaddle because guess what? Aqua purified all the hot springs, ticking off the locals again. Back in Axel, Kazuma starts feeling like a big shot after taking down the Demon King's generals. A girl named Lane approaches him, saying she's a big fan, which just inflates Kazuma's ego even more. After becoming a local hero, Luna capitalizes on Kazuma's inflated ego, asking him to defeat a golem in some ruins to keep up appearances for Lane. Kazuma's all in and ropes the girls into joining him. Once they reach the ruins, they discover the golem is actually a giant attacking robot. Darkness tries to hold it off while Kazuma persuades Megu to use her explosive magic. Megu hesitates, intrigued by the robot until Aqua promises to build her an even better one. Convinced, Megu blasts the robot, knocking it down. They consider taking its parts as a souvenir, but then, boom, the robot self-destructs. They barely make it out alive. The next day, Kazuma updates Lane, who's genuinely surprised. Luna then asks them to investigate the robot's ruins further. Inside, they find the creator's diary, revealing a beautiful sadistic robot is hidden somewhere. Kazuma decides to activate it, but quickly regrets it as the robot starts abusing him. Megu puts an end to it with her magic. Back at the guild, Kazuma sees Lane talking to Luna and realizes he's been played. Lane was hired to manipulate him and his team. The girls, watching from a distance, start teasing Kazuma, who's feeling pretty down. As payback, he uses his steal skill to swipe Luna and Lane's panties. Days later, Yun approaches Kazuma with a shocking request: to have a child with him for the good of her Crimson Archmage village, which Megu is also from. She hands him a prophetic letter saying their child would defeat the Demon King. Megu quickly debunks it as the work of a fantasizing academy mate, disappointing Kazuma. But there's a twist. Part of the letter is real. The Demon King's army is planning to attack their village, leaving Yun, the leader's daughter, worried. She decides to go back to the village, and Megu joins her to help out. Kazuma's squad teams up with Wiz for a quick teleportation near the Crimson Archmage village. They're ambushed, but Yun saves the day with her magic. They soon bump into the Demon King's soldiers. Megu detonates a few with her explosion magic, but there's more. Enter the Archmages. They clean up and use teleportation magic to get everyone to the village, much to the surprise of Kazuma's group. Once there, Hiro, Yun's father, and the village leader assures them everything is fine. An attack alarm goes off, but the Archmages handle it effortlessly, making it clear they don't really need any help. Megu then brings the group to her humble home. Her parents mistakenly believe Kazuma to be Megu's fiancé, putting him on the spot. He insists they're just friends, but Megu's mom has other plans, locking him in a room with her daughter. Megu pulls a quick escape through the window to sleep at Yu's house instead. The next day, Darkness mentions wanting to visit a place alone. While she's away, the group explores a clothing shop but gets distracted by a massive explosion. They rush to find Darkness battling Demon King soldiers, including a leader named Sylvia. Kazuma, quick to think on his feet, blames their previous triumphs over the Demon King's army on some guy named Kaio. Sylvia, impressed, calls a retreat for now. Kazuma and Megu find themselves locked in a room again. Megu thanks him for bringing her into his life, stirring emotions in both. Just then, the village comes under attack from the Demon King's army, interrupting their moment. Kazuma and the girls rush out and encounter Sylvia, whom Kazuma attacks for ruining his time with Megu. However, Sylvia easily stops him, figuring out he isn't the hero Kyo but kidnaps him anyway because she likes his personality. Kazuma surprisingly doesn't mind. Sylvia then reveals she's a chimera, both male and female, leaving Kazuma in total shock. She takes him to an ancient building with an anti-mage weapon aimed at the Crimson Archmages. Kazuma accidentally opens the place but traps Sylvia inside. Too bad for him, she absorbs the weapon and turns into a giant creature that begins to destroy the village. The gang scrambles to find a solution. Keeley points them to ruins with information on stopping the weapon. They find out the countermeasure is a hidden rifle in the village. As Kazuma finds it, it's not charged enough to work. Megu tries to power it up with her magic, but it still won't fire. Just when Kazuma tries again, someone else pulls the trigger, taking credit for defeating Sylvia. She's sent to the afterlife but refuses to stay dead. She returns and attacks again. Wiz and Vanir, who were out looking for an artisan, show up to help. They use Darkness's body to hold off Sylvia. Wiz rounds up the Archmages for a powerful spell. In a last-ditch romantic effort, Kazuma tells Sylvia he loves her. Pleased, she lets down her guard, allowing Megu and Yun to hit her with their combined magic. Kazuma tricks her into dropping her shield, and both are destroyed. Aqua revives him, and they head back to Axel where they're welcomed by the entire adventurer community.